This video is sponsored by Knuckles0x, Crimson Manifesto, and Jopi. We resume as Bardock fends off Raditz and Goku's ambush with little effort, showing Raditz he's once again become the experienced and venerated warrior he made him out to be in his head. However, this realization isn't enough for the boy to let go of its grudge completely, with him asserting that not only do they not need him around, but also the white lie that Mother doesn't even want to see him again. Goku begins to get an off feeling about things when Raditz says this, as while Mama has certainly been cross with Papa, by no means has she ever expressed a desire for him to leave forever, though as he tries to raise this concern in the midst of he and Raditz trying to bum rush Bardock, as he simply bobs and weaves around them effortlessly, while casually continuing his way up the mountain, though the little brother is waved off, with Raditz pointing out he knows what he's doing. However, something about hearing this exchange does cause Bardock to stop, catching a hammer fist which was meant to cave his skull in by his oldest, and a deviously aimed kick by his youngest, that sees the boy end up clumsily hung down in front of his father's face by the leg, as he inspects him with a firm gaze. The youngest member of the newly dubbed Son family flinches, but instead of any anger being directed solely at him, Bardock smiles and chuckles softly. Cool, you can talk now, huh, little guy? Getting a dumbfounded nod from the boy, surprised at his gentleness. This small interaction finally shakes Goku's resolve to follow Raditz's lead completely. Not the once again overwhelming power difference between he and his father. No, that just made him excited and happy, as he feels like his wish may have come true. Raditz, however, persists a little more, trying everything he can think of, even the Jonkin Po, and Bardock finally decides to take him at least a little bit seriously, as he can feel him trying to will his energy up for a ki blast once his hand is in the paper form. But when he catches the boy's hand, Raditz recalls a move he'd seen that elite Nappa do once, and simply released the energy through his mouth like a Nuzari, directly into Bardock's face at point-blank range, with a cloud of dust even kicking up. However, as Raditz thinks he's tired due to exerting his power so much, he quickly figures out he's simply being slung across Bardock's shoulder, held by his tail along with the strap of his travel bag, after his mighty father had dodged his biggest attack by a mile, with the scarred Saiyan simply telling his youngest boy to come along. They can all go talk this out, with Goku happily following along behind his dad, while Raditz turning a shade of green weakly calls him a traitor, trying not to puke while being handled like this. Bardock though tells him not to complain, citing this as a lesson that he should have been training his tail already, especially if you want to serve as a soldier, but looking down at Kakarot, more gently cites that he has a few more years before his will even be strong enough to build some resistance, so he's good for now. However, smiling back, the young boy corrects him, reminding the Saiyan of the alias Grandpa Gohan gave him, as he childishly explains that he's really only used to being called Kakarot when Raditz or Mama are angry or serious with him. Any other time, it's always Goku, or one of Raditz's affectionate nicknames, like Shorty, Runt, or Dummy. Hearing this, Bardock unconsciously squeezes Raditz's tail a bit harder, asking him more than the youngest really now, as if to enforce that as of today, this behavior had better cease. Or, he at least better come up with a nickname with a tiny bit more respect for the other brat. They were after all some of the last Saiyans, wouldn't do to have divisions amongst themselves. In this spirit, the father warns his youngest boy that he'll make an attempt to use his earthly name, but the name Kakarot is one he picked out himself, so it'll be kinda hard not to say it, even if he isn't angry or serious. However, Goku just laughs it off, saying it's okay, more interested in seeing if his father will fight him again after they get to Grandpa's, just as they set foot outside the little home. Seeing it up close for the first time in a year, Bardock actually gets a bit nervous for what's really the first time, for some reason now feeling some dread over seeing Gine again, as the seed of doubt Raditz planet finally blooms. Contemplating whether this is a good day for this kind of reunion or not, he gently sets Raditz down next to Kakarot, where he begins to regain his energy, while the scarred Saiyan's hands become clammy, and his tail wraps tightly around his waist in anticipation. Steeling himself, he enters the house, only now recognizing it's gotten a good bit bigger since the bit of repairs he helped with, as he enters the living room and kitchen area, finding Grandpa Gohan enjoying a cup of tea. The old man seems quite pleased by his return, even standing up to welcome him back and hug him, which is still quite foreign and strange to Bardock, even though he allows it. This means he can take it as a good sign things have been at least peaceful in his absence. Excited at his faux son-in-law being fresh off a mystical journey, and surely full of stories, Gohan inquires how things went, pouring Bardock a cup of tea that he gratefully accepts as the boys file in behind him, with this reminding Bardock of his only souvenir, as he pulls a round gray stone from his bag and hands it to the old man with a smirk, thanking him genuinely, but saying he'd like to wait for Gine, so he doesn't have to repeat the story all that much. This finally sees him say her name out loud once, and so saying it once again, he asks where she is, admitting he can't currently sense her on the mountain, though he's pretty new to the ability. This sparks up a conversation about ki sense, with Raditz taking a keen interest in the idea of a natural scouter, and even demanding to know why Grandpa didn't teach him this. But admittedly, the old man barely understands how he does it himself, having unlocked the ability fairly randomly during his training decades ago when he was still quite serious about it, so his own ki sense isn't the sharpest, explaining that like Bardock currently, he could only ever really sense what happened around an area about as big as Mount Powder before things got foggy, just kinda giving him the general sense that there is a power in said direction. Though since Bardock was so young, he'd more than likely get very acute with it, meaning he'd be a much better teacher for Raditz. This makes the scarred man feel a bit smug, while Raditz rumps too proud to ask his father to show him how to do this. Goku, on the other hand, most certainly isn't, though he's smart enough not to let Raditz know that. Bardock does think about it, the idea of training his kids, since it could be very necessary one day, though decides to keep to himself that he honestly isn't all that interested in training with brats. What kind of challenge could they really even offer in a real fight? To this end, he states maybe someday, since their little ambush was cute at least, but not entertaining enough for him to play with them as much as a kid would want to. This causes Raditz to bristle, snarking the drunkard didn't think it was so cute when he decided to block their combo moves. Bardock in turn snickering that block is a strong word. Honestly, Honestly, he's so much stronger, trying to guard their attacks would be a waste of ki, thus causing his oldest to punctually get in his father's face again, trying to instigate another scrap, while Bardock calmly sips his tea with a smug, At this moment though, Gine returns, with Bardock sensing her ki in the difference in it before he ever sees her, and causing her to choke on his drink a bit in surprise. He can feel her gains, and is more than impressed, as she's begun closing in on a decent tenth of his power, on her own it seems, and now while being on this soft planet of all places. However, when she enters and sees her man is back, where Bardock expects a tearful reunion between mates, she is instead very casual, recognizing him and greeting him almost boredly, before she begins to prepare the ingredients she's just gotten for a new dish. Okay, that's a bit weird, but works for Bardock. He'd rather avoid sappy stuff too. Plus, this means he can finally tell his story. And so as the Sohn family gather in the kitchen, the men around the table to listen to Bardock's tale, while Gine cooks, they are well entertained for the time it takes for the meal to be made ready. Bardock concluding the story and boasts of his standing up to Devilman and the god of Earth himself in order to get his wish, revealing the dragon is very much real, and the 4-star Dragon Ball is now the stone Gohan was given. The responses to this are shock and awe, though Bardock could swear he hears Gine scoff, but it was a bit too quiet to tell. As Gine lays out the portions of her hard work and announces the meal ready for consumption, everyone begins to eat, while Bardock realizes Gine still hasn't really interacted with him all that much, past just acknowledging him, the bare minimum, almost like what he was contributing to the family before he left, and still kinda now he supposes. The rest of the meal isn't overtly awkward. You can kinda tell both Bardock and Gine seem to be having some kind of internal monologues, but they don't seem outwardly upset or anything. But for the adults in the room, there's obvious tension, so much so that eating at a pace closer to the children, Grandpa Gohan figures an excuse of teaching the boys a new move that will make the very obvious subsequent ambush Raditz is plotting on Bardock more effective, quickly leading the two boys out of the room with his mouth still full of food. As the three leave, Bardock speaks to Gine bluntly, asking what's up, and here, she finally looks him in the eyes squarely for more than a glance, a somewhat soured smile to her face, as she claims nothing is. She's perfectly fine. It's not even like this is the first time he's been away for a long stint, even during their union, but this time just felt a little different. Bardock himself was in a very vulnerable place, and more susceptible to his basic instincts. Plus, his entire reason for going on this journey was to relieve his nightmares, and to find out if a legend was true for another woman after all. It's kind of a strange feeling. So being blunt herself, she's just simply not interested in instantly leaping into his arms and getting all lovey-dovey now that he's back as a result. However, Bardock is surprisingly understanding and respectful of this, though internally, he knows that Gine also having a powered-up backbone and assertiveness make him even more attracted to her at the moment. And now that she's talking about women and carnal stuff, his mind's been allowed to drift to the subject as well. After more than a year, stress and sleep deprivation gave him more than enough distractions, a sign they were both a bit frustrated by the separation. Plus, with Kakarot already talking and scampering around behind Raditz, it's a bit hard for both parents not to feel a bit broody. The itch for another kid very obviously starting to crop up. In the end, this caused the two to share a laugh, and therefore greet each other properly, embracing and relaxing their tails, with Bardock offering an apology for his failings and a promise to be on top of things from here on, while Gine pledges her own strength and support to him, claiming she's up for whatever he is, as long as they keep prioritizing their family above all else. Though for now, she wants to wait just a little longer before they try for any new additions. He was, after all, worried about retaliation from the Frieza Force eventually, so it could do to prep a tad more. Bardock, only a bit reluctantly, agrees to this, more than ready to pull his weight, and so a new status quo for the family is settled. First and foremost, Bardock indeed takes Dr. Breeze up on his offer to be his new head of security at Capsule Corp. It may be a small daily commute, but the pay is leagues beyond any other gig he's seen, including Pilaf's. And though there isn't as much fighting in the job description as he'd hoped, this ends up building the meager family some wealth on this planet, to both fuel Bardock's vices, as well as the other members of the families, but also the very frequent repairs and additions to Grandpa Gohan's once meager shack, as the family get into various sitcom-esque hijinks. You know the kind. Raditz and Kakarot are roughhousing while Bardock is trying to relax on his day off, and then they break something of Gine's, and so end up having to work together to replace it or hide it, since Bardock is meant to be in charge in these moments. Gine having to adjust the family's food management with the return of another full-grown Saiyan belly to fill, at which point she gets kind of obsessed with finding a rare beast she caught a glimpse of, and so ropes the entire family into helping her track down for them to try. However, when finally cornering the creature and seeing how cute it is, she gets a change of heart, then being forced to fend off her now ravenous family to save the animal from being lunch. With adventures like these to keep the days interesting, a new rhythm begins to build up. Bardock's routine starting with waking early in the mornings and going for a quote-unquote walk during Gine and Grandpa Gohan's morning Tai Chi, though in reality, this is simply pretense, since he basically enters into a silent contract with Raditz and Goku, who wake up even earlier than he does. He gives them an all-out shot at him once a day, and in return, when he gets back from work that night, they don't bother him about training or the like until the next day. Plus, he does like seeing the tricks they come up with, until he inevitably reverses or dodges whatever they throw his way. Then, he would offhandedly give advice each time, before leading the boys back home for breakfast. Sometimes these clashes come as repeat attempts at their ambush, and sometimes direct and brazen challenges, with the two boys ever so agonizingly slowly learn to conceal their presence and power over time. Though both boys still have a massive ways to go before they can truly train with their father and give him any benefits from it. At the same time, this is very good training for his own ki sense. This sees the boys both starting to make some significant gains, even with Bardock not putting in much elbow grease, and also tides over the need for their seeking out a martial arts teacher just yet. But more importantly, it means he can have more time and privacy for a few spars with Gine. If they can't screw, they may as well get their pent-up energy out somehow, and she's much more entertaining in this regard now, meaning Bardock doesn't have to hold back on her nearly as much, noting she's going to close in on and surpass Celipa's old battle power if she keeps training at this rate. Meanwhile, working for him, Reese eventually talks Bardock into teaching his kid Bulma some basic self-defense, and since he's a glorified babysitter bodyguard for Bulma in particular already, this would after all cut down on his workload a good bit if the brat could protect herself, so Bardock agrees to become a sensei. Not that the precocious brat has any interest in fighting, but as a rich genius kid rolling around like a big shot everywhere she goes, she's a fairly valuable target for all sorts of crooks, with Bardock even comedically spoiling a kidnapping or ransom attempt or two, and on accident at that. In turn, this gets him more familiar with Earth tech, since Bulma shows more interest in becoming a marksman than a brawler, and doesn't have much energy to speak of to reject out, though I do think with a teacher like Bardock, Bulma would eventually break the superhuman limit in total. At this short period of time, I think the least she should be able to reach is say Yamcha's original power level, or maybe a nice solid 10, certainly stronger than the average man, but by no means one of the toughest on the planet. This is more so a limitation of Bulma not truly being a fighter and seeking out greater strength, though the influence of Bardock could maybe somewhat change that eventually, since he's not just allowing her to indulge in her fascination with firearms, he's learning a bit about them himself. He does after all to make sure she's at least safe while doing so, just as he ends up learning to operate earthling vehicles for her as well, eventually even picking up a few in capsule form to give those gifts to Gohan and Roshi, just like he pondered about, though now that he's here and better able to explain than either Raditz or Gine could, old man Gohan very well may learn to fly on his own by the time Raditz's birthday rolls around. Still, in the meantime, it makes a wonderful birthday gift for the old man himself, making it so he isn't liable to need help getting into the city for any errands. This also means he can go see Roshi and Ox himself soon enough. About another 4 months pass as what Grandpa and the Earthlings referred to as April comes along, with Kakarot's 5th birthday rolling around, this time with it even being treated as an actual party, as Bardock invites a few of his new friends, including Master Roshi, Ox King and his family, Pilaf and Shu accompanied by a new girl filling in for him, and even the Breeze family, since he has had a few bring your kid to work days on accident by now, having had both Raditz and a fresh to flying Goku follow him to Caps Corp before, causing all kinds of hijinks and chaos, like Raditz getting into squabbles with Bulma, or Goku running around the various labs and factories of the massive corporation, causing more ruckus than Bardock ever did. Still, being such a good kid, everyone who's at least met Goku tries to get the youngest member of the Sohn family a meaningful gift this time, with Gohan's being the power pole, something Goku hopes may even the odds with Bardock, while Gine of course makes a massive feast of all his favorite foods, and even the Briefs give the family a television. Bardock, however, offers an actual demonstration of his full power for the first time, after Kakarot spent the better part of his return begging to see it, finally agreeing to form a massive ki blast he calls the Riot Javelin, and firing it off into space, where it breaks into smaller attacks and explodes in bright blue bursts like fireworks, while Raditz ends up getting his little brother a real win against him this time, as thanks to Bardock's training and Kakarot once again being a little more diligent under the pseudo-master, he's closed the gap between them a little more again. Sadly, in all the excitement and festivities, only Goku ends up meeting Master Roshi, and only in passing at that, having spent a bit more time playing with his brother and some of the other kids at the party, like Ox King's daughter. So when the old man climbs atop his spinning turtle to return to Kame House, and Bardock asks what the hermit thinks of his brats, he's blunt in saying he didn't get a good chance for a vibe check, encouraging him to bring them along with Gohan and that pretty wife visit to Kame House sometime. Then he'll see about teaching them should they be up to snuff. So as the night rolls on and guests begin to depart, we see a small moment of magic. Grandpa Gohan, Raditz, and Goku have wound up in food comas while cleaning up the remainder of the feast. So while Bardock and Gine clean up together, trying to speed through the task, they end up joking about the little party turned rager, and even share a couple of drinks together when they're done to relax. Eventually though, Gine gives Bardock a subtle signal that she's in the mood, one he's particularly hyper aware of, since he's been thinking the same, and he's thankful the house has not only been renovated to be large enough to give them privacy for such things, but also that he's even getting such a chance. So he gladly helps put his brats and the old man in their respective rooms, before sneaking off with Gine to their own. As this is really the first time the couple have actually slept together since arriving to this planet, it's really a special occasion for them both. However, as the lights are off, and things are just barely starting to become passionate, Bardock suddenly senses several figures materialize around them. But that's where we'll be leaving this story off, for right now. Alright, that does for part 6. I look forward to what the speculation on who these intruders are going to be, because I know you guys are going to have a few culprits in mind already, but I also hope I've given you enough red herrings to maybe kind of off-throw you just a little bit. I want to get this one out quick, so we'll just go ahead and jump straight into shoutouts and say thanks once again to Valerius Vaya and Mr. Negative for helping out with visuals, and of course shoutouts to the channel support. Also, speaking of, there are kind of so many of you now that reading all your names out at the end of videos is starting to add a lot of time to the video. So also let me know how you guys would feel if I picked a few random names to shout out at the end of videos. Knuckles OX, Crimson Crimson Manifesto, Jopi, Zach Haji, Pizza 15X, Aaron Winters, Normandy 1998, Xiao Pai, Coder SV3, Ronan Charizard, Daniel Smith, Dylan Wolfdog 31, Infernet Beast 326, Jay Ray, Johnny, Narku, Omar Cousins, Social Assassins More, Steven Norton, Tyrion, The Shadows, Vegeta What Ifs, Alamancer, B, Lyman Rogers, Omar Muhammad, Aiko, Arcane of the Heart, Tay, Inebriated, John Sullivan, Corporal Atkins, Trent Rouse, Dark Shadows, Pokemon Trainer Cam, River Joy, Elijah Edwards, Mr. Hamtastic, Jesus is King, Half an Onion, Angel Gonzalez, David Spalding, Lil T910, Joseph Lowe, Trainer Rad 164, Luca Reynolds, Baron Stormblade, Ono, Chris Macriano, Lily, Simroth, Red Violet, DeAndre, Gerald Smith, John Self, Jacob Whitaker, Massive Oak Woodtree, Demon Set, True Trey, Dutch McGee 101, Bruce Boswick, Illis Cyclops, Craig Shyman, Jal Madden, King Music for Real, Ballcore, Zach Eubanks, Crab Trooper 4552, NBA Fan, Courtney Hawkins, Orion 101, Christian Kyler, Dominic Wiltz, Jester DeMille and Demi the Jester, Cyber Samurai, The Storybuster, One Cold Pirate, Gaining 667, Kelstar 159, Dr. Ember, Chris, Novak Daddy, Kieran Lightfoot, Ooga Booga, Kier Skywalker, Andre, Chandler Does What Ifs, Monaka Modilla, J. Ron Miller, Indigo Saturn 64, Fimigo Galande, Austin White, Benny Montoya, Scurry, J. Roboza, Gallo Magalan, Josie, Raheem Williams, Talon Wolf, and Death Cheat. Thank you guys for directly supporting the channel as always, but with that said, there's nothing left for me to do but sign off. So take care of yourselves and the world around you, and as always, go beyond plus ultra. And I'll see you guys next time.